Here we are, the Quiggin Out MMA Podcast, episode 44, and we're being joined by a friend of the show. I like to say that for anybody who's been on the show and anybody I've interviewed in the past, but just generally an amazing person in Crystal Bear Lawson. How we doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. So I got it right off the bat. The reason we're talking now is the announcement. You were talking about having something big. And anytime right now in this day and age, anybody says the word bare knuckle, now nobody knows where you're going because you've got BKFC, you've got BKB, and then now we've got Jorge Masvidal's bare knuckle MMA. So talk about how in the world did you end up doing this? And how exciting is this to be on, one of the first cards that they've ever done? Obviously we had the first one, but this being just the second card in this promotion's history, how exciting is that for you?
I'm so excited. I'm honored. It kind of happened because I've been looking for Thai fights, and obviously at my weight, it's kind of hard to come by. And I've just been looking and looking, and finally I decided I can't put myself in this box and just only do Muay Thai, or I'm just never gonna fight. I haven't fought in a year because of COVID, and I'm just never gonna fight. And I didn't necessarily want to just do bare knuckle because, man, I don't have my knees, I don't have my kicks, I don't have my elbows, right? So then this opportunity came. Tammy has just been putting my name everywhere. Hey, she's looking for a fight. She wants to fight. I'm training. I'll take fights on short notice. And then they approached Tammy and said, or Dean Toole sent a message and said, hey, I've got an opportunity for you. And I was just like, okay. No.
You're like, no, yeah.
Sure, let's take it. Because for me, even though my MMA experience isn't super high, it's not that I'm not good at it either. So for me to get to go out, and I've been obsessed with left way, so for me to get to go out and hit somebody bare knuckle and still have all my other weapons as well just seemed like a really cool opportunity. And I know this show, I really believe it's gonna blow up. Gamebred, I feel is where it's going to be. Everybody already loves BKB. Everybody loves bare knuckle right now. And just to get to be a part of bare knuckle MMA, I think and be one of the few females that are kind of starting out doing it is just so important to me. I mean, I was one of the first females really getting started in Muay Thai several years back, from where I'm from. So I'm looking, this is a new opportunity, and I think I said on another podcast, to kind of reinvent myself and to kind of show why I'm here, but in a whole new way,
Absolutely. And you've always been somebody who's not trying to limit themselves to one aspect of it. I mean, you've done Muay Thai, you've done Glory, you've done MMA, you've done it all. And I feel like this is just another way to go. And it always comes up every time I talk about bare knuckle. Every single time is how barbaric it is and how, just ridiculous it is at times. And at the same time, it's really grown into a legitimate aspect of the sport where now we have, game-bred bare knuckle MMA, which is something we never thought we'd have. We're going back to Valley Tudo. We're going back to the early UFC days. And we're really getting back to roots and showing. And even then, going back to John L. Sullivan, you've got those guys in the 1800s who were boxing bare knuckle, and how all the memes about bitch mittens and everything else, people laugh, but that's exactly what it is. So for you, what's it going to be like to go from, the Glory gloves, which are the biggest gloves you wear, to nothing? Is that something you're really I wouldn't say concerned about, but really looking forward to, because it takes all the extra elements out of the fight and puts it in your hands, literally.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it, just because the one thing that I have liked about MMA, obviously everybody knows I love Muay Thai, but the one thing that I liked about MMA is getting to crack people with little gloves. So the opportunity now is to hit someone with even less. So of course there's aspects where you're like, man, that you're probably going to leave and your face is going to look like shit. But you're gonna get better. So for me, I'm just so excited. I think it is super primal, and I think that it brings out this part of anybody who's a warrior, who's ever like wanted to fight. It's something that not a lot of people want to do. A lot of people, you'll be like, "Hey, are you interested in doing that?" And it's like, no way.
No.
And when I first started watching it, I was like, there's no way I would ever do that. Like, look at these guys. Like, hell no. And then, I kept watching and it kept growing on me. And I was like, oh, but like, I can't do anything. But then when they said, okay, well, I got offered a Muay Thai fight with MMA gloves. So I'm still waiting to hear about that one. We'll find out about that later. But I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Got to talk about some left way opportunities, which
yes, headbutts.
Yeah, which I think would be badass. So I got really excited about that. So I kind of already got it in my mind. All right, like, okay, let's just do this. And then the MMA opportunity came up, and it just feels right, and it feels like the next step in my journey, and I'm just gonna see where I can go with it.
And I love that. And Tom Schaff, one of the BKFC guys, he actually brought up the left way, and I had no idea what it was. And I think it's so cool to have followed MMA. I say followed MMA for over a decade, but I like went back and watched as much as I could from the early days, watching a lot of that stuff. And the left way stuff is nuts. So anybody who's willing to do that could really do any sport.
Yeah, hopefully I'll get to do that maybe next year. Of course, everybody talks, so we'll see if it happens and when it happens. And someday when the world opens up, if not, I would love to go to Burma, and I would love to train. And that's kind of one of my goals eventually, is kind of go everywhere and try every martial art and actually compete in it. But that is just like on the top of my list because it's just so raw,
And I think that's what's so unique about you, because you have a person who, you're not saying I'm the best at this, I'm the best at this, I'm the best at this. You're really becoming a jack of all trades in MMA, which should be a normal thing. You have the wrestling, you have the jiu-jitsu, you have the striking, but to go off and do completely different sports where you're restricted in what strikes you could throw and what gloves you have to wear, like, how do you keep all that in your head in that moment in the fight where you're like, am I allowed to do this? Do you ever think like, oh shit, I can't do that? Like, like right as you go to throw it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's obviously part of the learning process, and I'm not going into this right now. This is my pro MMA debut. I'm not going into this as some expert. I'm still going into this as I'm learning. Of course, I'm in practice times, and man, I don't know when is this hook or that hook or what I should be doing, or maybe I'm thinking about submission grappling when really I should be trying to get up. So, man, I'm not an expert, but I know that I have the heart, and I have the drive, and I have a fucking gas tank, and I know that I'm going to go out and put on a show, and I know that no matter what, at the end of the day, if my heart's in it, and I give every single thing I've got, then I'll win the fight. That's all that matters.
And that's the mindset you have to have. You have too many people out there, and I'm not going to name names just because there are certain people in the MMA world who I just don't agree with how they carry themselves. Yes, it drives up the business. Yes, it drives up the marketability for the casuals.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't do anything good for those people who are hardcore fans, who will watch the undercards. And I say this every time I watch a pay-per-view. I will start looking at how many empty seats there are up until the pay-per-view. And it is astounding to me that people would pay any amount of money to go see 5 fights.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
I've been to amateur shows where there have been 24 fights. And I was there for the first one, and I stayed into the last one. You want to die at the end of that. I'm not going to lie.
I went to one in Valdosta, Georgia. This has been, I don't even know what year this was in, but it was an all amateur card, and it was amateur MMA. They couldn't hit to the head, only the body. And there were like, I swear there had to be like 30 fights on this card, and it was like in this gymnasium. And I just remember sitting there, and it was so long because nobody can really do any damage to each other. They're wearing big gloves, and it was just like, so painfully boring. But now undercards are like really good, and they end up a lot of the time being some of the best freaking fights.
Yeah, and you really look at it, and there's so many fights, and it's getting to the point where this weekend or this past weekend, whichever it was, that didn't have a card. I think it's this weekend that doesn't. Like,
Yes.
it's kind of nice. And I say that as somebody who will watch every fight, who will, leave friends like, no, I got to start watching it now. I got to go now. So you have that, and you have this bare knuckle coming in, and the last card coming through Tampa. There was a lot of spectacle behind it. There was a lot of YouTubers and TikTokers, which I really wasn't a fan of. But then you had Paige Van Zant and Rachel Ostovich in the main event, and you had Britain Hart, who had just beaten Paige, underneath her, fighting Jenny Savage. And so, like,
Britain was so good. Like I said, I think that this girl, I don't know her, and obviously I don't know a lot about bare knuckle. But watching that fight, I think that girl is going to be the best. I think she's got the best idea of what to do with what's happening in bare knuckle. She knows how to work inside, and I think she's going to be the champ. I really do.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think it was almost disrespectful. And I don't mean any disrespect to David Feldman, but to put her on underneath a woman who she had just beat. And now you've got Paige, who realistically has been in 10 rounds of bare knuckle, and she's won 2 rounds out of 10.
Right.
It's not looking good, but at the same time, it shows you how they're not giving her any easy fights.
Right.
None of these fights are easy. But you look at some of these bare knuckle people, and Tay Starling was a great example back in February. Between her, her face was destroyed after that fight, and a month later, it's fine. You don't see that in MMA. You don't see it in the same way. A leg could break, an arm could break, when most of your strikes are just in the face. So taking that outlook, why is bare knuckle MMA that much more? I probably can answer my own question. It's more enticing to you because you can do anything you want.
Yeah, you can do anything you want. Something I told my mom, and it's not something I ever really think about, but honestly, from my understanding and from what I've read and studied, is that there's actually less brain damage, because more than likely you are taking less hits because it doesn't take as many hits. I think it's like the main thing behind it, and things are more with the purpose. And man, when you go out, you're out. So yeah, and it's yeah, man, I'm pretty amped about it.
And it's so funny that you say that, because show somebody, I'm going to use this fight for an example, Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2. And they are bloody, their lips split open, like everything. And then you look at a bare knuckle fight and you go, oh, they've got way more damage. And you're right, but you have been hit a lot less. And because you're getting hit with knuckles instead of gloves, it's going to show more than it would with a glove.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'd love to see 5 years down the road the statistics on this.
Yeah,
I really would.
Again, hopefully I leave and I'm not a total wreck, but most of the fights, both people, win or lose, you both are pretty messed up.
Yeah.
I told my mom the other day, I was like, if I do this long enough, there's going to be stitches. There's going to be a lot of stuff happen. And she's just like, put your face. I'm like, hopefully, along the way, I can get a plastic surgeon to sponsor me, and then they'll just fix me right up there.
Note to any plastic surgeons listening to the show right now, future project right there.
My scars. A few scars are cool though, so I'm good with that. So I'm not too worried about that.
Well, and you've been doing combat sports for a long time. We've talked about this over and over, and I don't mean to say a long time like you're one of the older people in it, but anybody who's been doing it really more than 5 years and hasn't quit.
Yeah.
And been doing it in multiple disciplines, multiple promotions. I know we talked about this last time. The Glory debut did not go the way, the Glory fight did not go the way you wanted it to.
Right.
But it's one of those things where I feel like, hey, we're just walking back. Look, is he going to make eggs again?
Are you going to make some more eggs?
No.
No.
Inside joke, guys. Sorry.
He's too embarrassed about his eggs now. Like he's going to hide in shame because they suck so much.
I think it's so funny, though, because so many people, like, you know, that was the lowest of the low in a sense, because it was like you worked so hard. And I remember talking to you literally on like my lunch break in my car for that interview.
Yeah.
And there are people pulling up and I'm like, go away. Like I'm in the middle of them. And I remember how focused you were and how you talked about that. And it happens in fighting. And I think that to be a fighter, you have to understand that that is something that can happen. And I think what you had said, it was fear of success is real. And it's something that really like resonated with me, because you get these people who get to a point where they're like, yeah, I got to this highest stage. This is it. And then they lose and they go, I'm done.
Right.
That is absolutely it. And I always loved your drive, because you have that where you don't just necessarily bounce from one to another, but you look for an opportunity. And I think it's more to redeem yourself to yourself. You're not doing this for anybody else.
Yeah, I'm doing this strictly for me. Like I said, I think that's one of the main things is don't do anything for other people. Again, I was sort of apprehensive about the bare knuckle thing at first, but I do know that I'm not 21 anymore, and I've got X amount of years left in the sport. I don't have the same wear and tear on my body as a lot of people my age, but I want to take this next several years and just, make a really good run at this. And I think this could be the opportunity. I really think if I go out there and perform the way that I'm training and the way that I know I can, I have a lot to prove just to myself, honestly. The glory loss sucked, and a lot of people talk a lot of shit, but that doesn't define me as a fighter. You know, I have so many other things that people will never see, or fights that have never been shown or online. People will never see that. They only see this one loss. So for me, I have to prove something to myself, but it'll be nice to prove other people wrong as well. There's a little bit of probably anger there, just because people have talked, shit along the way. So I'm looking forward to kind of shutting some people up,
And I have to bring this up because it was one of the funniest things I've had a female fighter ever say. And you said girl fights suck. Now, this was a couple.
Most of the time, the girl fights do suck. They're getting better, but most of the time, when you see a really good female fighter, you're like, man, she's really good. And it's still to the point, though. I understand it's 2021, but we're still to the point where, it's like, well, she's really good,
And I think going the bare knuckle route, we've seen a huge change, because I will say the girl fights in bare knuckle are some of the best fights that have been put on. Why do you think that is?
I agree.
So why do you think that is? Like, why is that such a difference versus MMA?
Good question. Maybe because women are just crazy. And a lot of the bare knuckle fights are just like balls to the wall. So maybe it's just like, women like to get in bar fights and stuff and like cat fights. So maybe this is just like their chance to just like go all out, because like, let's face it, a lot of times there's not a lot of technique. You don't know with bare knuckle. You don't know. You can have somebody with this many fights versus somebody with no fights, and that person may just start them and you're done. So it's just like, whoever's night it is, that's whoever's night it's going to be.
And I think that's the best part about it, is that it really is a toss-up. And we'll go with, a fight that's always going to stick in my mind is Bobo Abannon and Zach Kalmus. Like, that fight was insane. And it looked like two guys who weren't going to put on a good fight. And it's no disrespect to either one of them. Heavyweights, they've always had the cardio. Everyone's always dogging about that, about cutting weight and everything else. But those were two guys who put everything on the line for a fight like that. So going into bare knuckle, you're seeing these names pop up. You're seeing, I think they just announced, Dean just put on Rashawn Jackson and Jonathan Ivey, which I'm really looking forward to. Just because, I've known Rashawn for years, and seeing a guy like Jonathan Ivey with over 100 fights, like, you're seeing established veterans in here who can redefine their career with something like this. And I think that's what bare knuckle's done. Bare knuckle went from, we're taking the cast-asides, we're taking the people who lost a bunch of fights by submission,
right,
and we're bringing them into a fight where the odds have evened.
Right, I agree.
And the best man's going to win. So, like, with bare knuckle for you, for the MMA side of it, what do you see as the biggest challenge going from, wearing the bigger gloves, the Muay Thai, and, like you said, making technically your professional MMA debut, doing bare knuckle, like MMA, like, it's nuts.
Just like I said, just remembering that it's not just Muay Thai, it's not just wrestling, it's not just grappling, it's everything. So if I'm in this position, I can still hit you here. I'm not just looking for this or that. And through my weeks of continuous training, I know drilling that in, I'm gonna remember that stuff. But that's the only thing right now that I feel like is the biggest thing. I don't have a concern about getting hit or hitting someone else. It's just more like I find myself right now in situational drills where I'm like, oh, I could have done that, but I didn't because I'm so used to, okay, Muay Thai, or I'm so used to, this is what I do in grappling. So it's just like putting it all together.
And I think that's so fun to watch, the amount of restraint you have to have, because you watch so many fighters will go to throw that knee and then stop. They'll go to throw that kick and be like, oh.
Right. One thing that I've noticed is cool is even in training, we don't think about, like, with no gloves, like even without MMA gloves, our hands are more free to do more things. So it actually opens up a few more opportunities for things when it comes to MMA, wrestling, grappling. So I'll be excited to see what I do with it.
Absolutely, and especially with the Muay Thai background, that plum feels like it's going to be a lot easier to grab when you've got no gloves on. I don't know, that's just me.
Right.
So, since the last time we talked a little bit about this before. Not only are you going into a big change and a big, a different venue when it comes to your career, you've got your own difference in personal life. So I want to talk a little bit about, what's been going on in your personal life in the last year or so, and how that's affected kind of your life moving forward.
So I ended up, I've been traveling back and forth to Georgia pretty much forever. I met my husband. We actually met online through like some gym things. He,
of course,
he thought I was a CrossFitter, and he invited me because he had just like saw a picture of me and squatting. So he thought I was a CrossFitter, and he was like, "I'm gonna show this girl some Muay Thai," And so then I started naming names, and I think it was kind of like, okay. So he invited me to the gym, and he's like, "Oh, like she actually like is really good." So we ended up
slightly embarrassing. So just
like,
know that this is forever recorded, so you're good.
He's like, "That was my special thing, and now you took it." But so we met back in late June. And I came up and started visiting, and we got married in September. And then I moved up officially in we bought a house in November, and then our house flooded. We bought a house that was built in 1971. Then the house flooded. So we basically didn't have a kitchen until like January.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. Like we were down to like, literally we had dirt in our kitchen floor. Like everything had to be gutted out. So our whole entire kitchen was quarantined off, and they had to, bring in like the, I don't know, whatever the
That's
thing.
like a no word anymore. You can't use quarantine anymore.
They had to shut it off with some plastic, and then there was like sucking all the mold and stuff out. So definitely, like, obviously not something you plan when you buy a new house. So
No.
that was pretty crazy. Like, just had crazy things happen since we moved in, but finally got that all together, got all the remodeling done, and our house was like finally ready. And I think February we're able to have our entire house. I've been doing a lot of remodeling. My dad came up and redid hardwoods and stuff. I love to do like home improvements. And
the dog's like, I help too.
He's like, what about me? I got a puppy too. So now everything's kind of settling back out, and we'll be coming up September 22nd. Will be our anniversary, so we'll have been together for a year, and we've been through a bunch of crazy stuff within that year, and within that will be my first bare knuckle MMA fight. So,
and that's insane because, I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this. Not saying like this moved fast, but it like when you know, and at the end of the day, like I've just seen like the posts and everything else. You just seem so much happier. Mm-hmm. Like you found like one of those missing pieces, and at the same time, him thinking you were a CrossFitter and I'm gonna teach this girl some Muay Thai, like completely backfired, and he's still with you, so we're good. Like obviously, he's a keeper.
Mm-hmm. He did some wrestling through most of school too, and then played football through college. So now, and he loves Muay Thai too, but now he's been going to MMA practices with me, and he's like, oh yeah, like I remember that I'm really good at this. And I was like, yeah, you should just do it because like that's where you came from and you're good. Like whether you want to compete in it or not, like you're really good at it. So just do it for fun, whether you ever do an MMA fight or not. Like it doesn't mean it's like, just keep doing it. Have fun.
And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. Just because you train jiu-jitsu does not mean you need to compete. And I think that's the thing behind it is that, well, if you train, you have to compete. Well, you don't.
Yeah, if you do something like just do it for fun. He actually did the IKF, and I cornered him for that, so that was kind of cool. So we've been through all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. So pushing, somebody into that where it's like, listen, I think you would be good at that. If you have a wrestling background, in my opinion, you have a 90% chance of being good at MMA.
Yeah, like, I mean, he's had like 5 fights, but he just really, same as me, loves Muay Thai, and I think he just doesn't really like the jiu-jitsu aspect. But I make him every day now. He has to do pummel with me and do stuff, so maybe we'll just like it.
Like, again, he walked into this thinking I'm going to teach her something, and he's sitting there going, "What happened? Like, how did we get here?"
I've said that I've never like loved MMA. I've always loved Muay Thai, and I've always liked wrestling, and I liked jiu-jitsu. Okay, but I think it's all about having the right coach, and I had a really good coach at Gymmo. And since moving to Georgia, there's no real like MMA gyms, and I started to supplement training with Doug Usher. It's literally like 10 minutes from my house, and he has been such a good coach for MMA. I've only been there, several weeks now, but when somebody's a great coach, you just know. And with him, the first time I heard him talk, I just kind of knew. And I was like, okay, this is where I need to be for this specific aspect.
And that's the thing, like you said, being 10 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
People do not have that kind of, availability when it comes to it. But think about like 20 years ago, trying to find a gym that could supplement your aspect. You had to travel states away. Like,
yeah, I mean, even to do my Muay Thai, I live, 30 minutes outside of the perimeter. So, I mean, I drive almost an hour to practice, an hour home. I spend a lot of time in my car. So to find something that just so happened, like I kind of accidentally found it. I started working with the boxing coach there, and I was like, oh, well, they have MMA. Let me just try it. And then I just said, wow, like this place has just been right here the whole time.
And you've done, I know, over talking to you through the years, you've been all over really like the East Coast.
Yeah.
You were in New England, like you said, South Carolina, and now being in Georgia. Like, what is the biggest differences you're seeing in those scenes over the years? Or has it just been you're where you need to be and what you need is more accessible than it ever has been before?
So I think New England, everything was so far away. There's a lot of good Muay Thai there, but again, everything is really, really far away. And if you're like not in Boston, you're driving like forever. In North Carolina, it was good, but people, they come and they go. Outside of that, my coach there, Jeff Jimmo, he's one of my greatest friends. I still go to him on my strength conditioning and my cardio and stuff. And, he's just amazing. I didn't have a lot of girls there. Coming to Georgia, I've noticed that there's a lot of cross training here. So whereas some places it might be kind of taboo to go to like this gym and that gym, here it's kind of known that, okay, well, you might go to this place for jiu-jitsu and this place for Muay Thai. And most of the time, it's not a problem. So that's kind of cool to get to, go different places and get what you need. It's not cool on paying the gym memberships.
No, definitely not.
But outside of that, yeah, there's a lot more cross training and people kind of working together as different groups. And, you'll see here a lot of the heavyweights might get together at this specific gym, or, there's a lot of, at the gym I'm at now for my kickboxing, we've got a lot of girls there. And then the gym I'm at for my MMA, I've got an amazing girl to train with there. I believe she's a black belt. She's a freaking amazing wrestler. She's got her MMA debut coming up just a couple weeks after mine. So,
wow. That's awesome.
To have a training partner like her is going to be just like honestly beneficial for both of us. I think she fights a little heavier than me. Krista Timms is her name, but man, she's going to be a problem for a lot of people. I think she couldn't find fights as an amateur because she is really good. So, having her now as a resource and me to be a resource for her, I think people are going to have some problems on their hands.
And I think that's super exciting because, you started in a world where trying to find other female training partners was very difficult. You were having to train with the guys and having to, deal with the fact that whether we like it or not, anytime a guy trains with a girl, don't have anybody tell me anything otherwise. You do it differently.
Right.
As a guy, and I'll say this especially in jiu-jitsu, like as a guy, you're more concerned with where you put your hand, where you do this. As with a guy, a guy and a guy, you don't care. Like your hands go everywhere, whatever happens.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I will say tonight, kind of pulling off of that, Jay had never seen me wrestle or grapple because we mainly just kickbox together. And so we were kind of going live tonight. And for the first time, he had to actually see me wrestle. And he's standing in the back. He's like, man, I hope Bear does okay. He's feeling like he might be stressed out because, I have girls to go with, but then I'm having to go with these guys. And he's like, I thought I was going to be really nervous, but then I saw you and I realized, oh, she's good. He was like,
oh, she's good.
I think because I kind of talk, sometimes when it comes to this type of skill, I talk myself down. I'm like, well, I'm not really that good at it. I'm okay. I can get by. And I got a lot of work to do. I'll be the first one to say it. But, I mean, I'm not bad either. So I think probably the way I talk about it was probably what concerned him a little more.
But it is. And it's not a sexist thing. It's not a inferiority thing. It's a respect thing. In the same way when you roll with anybody, guy, girl, it doesn't matter. You're trying to be respectful. You're not trying to do anything that they like to refer to as dick jitsu.
Right.
Where you're doing something where you're in a competition, go for it. In training, don't ever do that to me.
Right.
But you have those moments where you're like, oh, sorry. And they're like, I'm fine. Let's go. And you can tell some people get annoyed by that. But at the same time, you're like, I can't just post off somebody,
Mhm.
wrestling, jujitsu, whatever it's going to be. You punch another guy in the chest, you don't think anything of it. You punch a girl in the chest, you're like, are you okay? And
I
I'm
know
sure you,
they pick me all the time, and they'll be like, "Sorry, okay." I'm like, "I'm fine. It's
yeah,
good."
like I'm doing this for a reason. Like I know that's going on. So, with something like that, I know we went off on a weird tangent, but really like it's the perfect one because you're dealing with that every day. You're dealing
Mhm.
with that. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. I don't think it's ever going to be something where they're just going to forget about it because it's ingrained in our mind, like not to hit women, not,
Mhm.
to apologize if you do, like whatever the case is. But
Yeah.
in that setting, like you didn't just walk into class and not know what you were doing.
Right. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
you didn't walk in for knitting and go, oh, this is kickboxing and get kicked in the head and go, what happened? Like,
Oh, what's
oh,
happening?
yeah, what are you doing? Like, I don't know what's going on. So really, this sport is so evolving, and I say the sport of MMA, and I'm including bare knuckle, MMA, jiu-jitsu. You're just seeing new things. You're seeing something that is constantly evolving where other sports are not.
Yeah, it's like fashion and music, right? Like we're back to bell bottoms now, or we're back to this or that. It's like everything goes back around where it's really we're just taking what used to be and bringing it back, but we're just making it bigger and better.
Yeah. And you're not seeing that with any other sport. You're
Mhm.
seeing safety measures being put into the NFL. You're seeing rule changes in baseball. You're seeing time limits in this or time limits in that. But MMA is always, you're just seeing people do new things all the time. And it blows my mind that a sport, that in its infancy, and we'll say the UFC in its infancy, being around for 28 years now, going on 29, the UFC itself, you've got a sport that's been around for decades longer than that. And they're finding out ways to take something that's been around for that long and
Yeah.
make it better, make
Yeah.
it safer, and make it more entertaining. Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, this is entertainment.
It really is. It's so entertaining.
I mean, I didn't know if you were going to agree with that. So I was like, yeah, it is entertaining. Like,
No, it is like because, like I said, at first I was just like, man, I don't know about this. But then we had fought the fights and we watched almost every one, and I'm like, why do you keep doing this? And I was like, because this shit's really entertaining. Like it's really fun to watch. Like it's so fun to watch.
and because you don't normally, there's no storyline. There's no, I'm going to beat you. There's not months and months and months. It's like this guy is going to fight this guy or this girl's going to fight this girl. You know, we'll be
Every time
honest.
we watch the backyard brawls, like that's kind of our thing. Like I bet every night on the backyard brawls. And the street beefs. The street beefs is what they are, and I'm up to $48 now because I had way more, but then I spent it. But anyway, because I'm really good at picking who's going to win street beefs. And I just want to go watch some street beefs. I don't know if they'll ever listen to this, but I just want to come watch. I want to be a spectator. I'm obsessed with street beefs too.
You've got
But
an expert better right here. That's exactly what that is.
that's my nightly routine now. Is I'm like, are there any new street beefs on? And then I'll pick them based on it's kind of like Mortal Kombat. Like I'll pick based on their outfit or their hair. And I usually, you know what? All I'm saying is I'm really good at picking who's going to be the winner. That's all I'm saying.
I will never forget, and I know I'm gonna say the wrong person. I want to say it was Jason Jackson. I was at a friend's house who had never watched MMA. They turned
Mm-hmm.
on the fights, and you had one guy who was in shape, and then you had one guy who was really in shape.
Yeah.
And my friends were like, that guy's gonna gas out. And I was like, why would you say that? And I go, just look at him. That's a lot of muscle. That's a lot to carry on. 3 minutes into the fight, gassed out. And I went, you sure you don't watch fights? So
You just never know. With the street beefs, you never know. Like if you pick the guy that looks like he's been lifting weights, that I'm just saying that guy is probably gonna lose. It's like there's one guy. His name is Shitbird, and I'm like I'm picking Shitbird based on his name, and I'm pretty sure Shitbird won.
Well, and I feel like with a name like Shitbird, like you can't lose.
Right, like you're right. If you take that name, but his dad was like hounding him hard in the background. So Shitbird's dad's gonna like beat him down. Maybe one day Shitbird's gonna give him like his dad is gonna give him a good name when he like builds up that reputation, and it'll be like a special bird, like an eagle or something.
So I got to know more about street beefs. Where are you watching street beefs? And tell me what was the best fight you've seen so far? Like, what was one that you were like just speechless about?
Oh man. Well, they're on YouTube, so you just look up street beefs. And man, there's so many. There's so many. They're everywhere. They're mainly in the East Coast. I think a lot of them are in Virginia. There's some in most are in Virginia. I think there may be some in Chicago, and I can't remember where else. Maybe out in Cali, but the best ones are the East Coast ones. And I'm not just saying that because I'm from the East Coast.
Hey, I'm in Florida. It's all right. You could say East Coast is better. It's fine.
But have I had a favorite street beef? No, I have a favorite slap fight. That's the big Hawaiian versus the redneck guy, but I don't know the redneck guy's name. But yeah, both of those, every night, that's my thing.
Oh my God, 2.29 million subscribers on Street Beefs.
It's amazing. It's just, man,
This is what I'm going to be doing after the show. Like, I might just start watching it now. Like, okay.
Like, you're going to become obsessed. And they put new ones like every day. So you're never let down because there's always new street beefs. And they've all got great names. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Shitbird.
There's Shitbird. There's Shitbird. The guy who does the announcing is Lord Besteban. I can't think of any of the other names right offhand, but they've all got some names. And sometimes those man, I'm telling you. I think Blueface needs to go on Street Beefs. I'm going to throw that out there too.
I mean, it bothers me because so much I really wanted to go to this last bare knuckle. Mm-hmm. And seeing all the advertisements about the TikTokers and the YouTubers really drew me away from the event.
Yeah, and I agree with that. For me, you get so excited, and we kind of like at a high in our house, and I understand why they did it. And if they would have been bare knuckle, that would have been one thing. And again, I understand you're going to try and make money, and I think that it may have been for some sort of they were giving the money to someone too. So I get it. And maybe if it was one of them, or maybe one on each show or something. But it kind of
that's fine. One.
Yeah, it kind of took that momentum and then brought it down. So, we'll see. But
it bothered me more because it was in Tampa, where I am. It was on my birthday. And I was like, I'm going to go see bare knuckle fights. And I saw those and I just went, I don't want to go. And I felt so bad because the rest of the fights on that card were absolutely amazing. Every single one of them. And I just went, I get it. Put one on every card. I'm fine with it. You've got guys.
It's a little much for me. It just kind of slowed the momentum down too much. But 3 was a little much. So take it down. Now, if they would have been bare knuckle, I might change my tune, but I don't think they could do that.
No. Well, and you'll see things like that where you'll see two people kind of, and I don't want to say mismatch, but you'll see somebody who's got 30 fights in the UFC. This happened last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
30 fights in the UFC versus somebody who's got 11.
Mm-hmm.
The Bobby Green.
And they're like trying to bring in even more audience. So from a promoter standpoint, they're thinking of like, hey, we're going to, because you do look at a lot of the BKB fighters and they are older. And I do believe the crowd is probably of a little, not a super young age group. So maybe they're just, from a business standpoint, looking like, all right, well, if we bring these guys, we've got all these like super young viewers. So just trying to bring those people kind of into the fold type of deal,
Absolutely. And I could say I've been to probably more than a dozen MMA fights. If you count amateur, it's dozens. And I've been to a few bare knuckle fights, and there have been less fights at the bare knuckle fights in the crowd than there have been. Like, UFC Orlando in like 2015. I saw somebody 3 rows down that I knew, went and talked to them, turned around. The guys behind me got in a fight, and the one guy punched the dude, and he landed in the seat where I would have been sitting.
Oh, no.
And I just went, really? Like, this is not the place to do this. Bar fight in some podunk town, go for it.
Yeah.
Not here. Not here.
Not here. Take it down a whole level.
So moving forward, like you said, you're a month out from this fight. Does the preparation change? How different is it from everything you've been training for before? Because this is really something you've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
You have the knowledge, but as far as actually doing it, this is the first time. So how is that different this time around? And do you see any obstacles that you kind of have to overcome over the next month?
Not specifically. I mean, outside of the fact of just going to a few different places for my training. Yeah, I mean, there's all these things that people say you need to do for like knuckle conditioning and stuff. But honestly, after X amount of years already hitting things, you're going to already have some conditioning to your knuckles. And it's just going to be a matter of getting in there and doing it. There is some knuckle conditioning and things that I'm doing, but is that really going to do anything? I don't really know. Do we really know? I mean, like I watched Wonder Boy's dad did a video of hitting the whatever, like the stick thing with the leather on it. So I mean, there's stuff to try, and I've had a few guys from my gym that have a karate background who gave me a few tips on different ways of hitting. So there are a few things slightly that I'll change up just to be aware, because even though a glove it's still providing just that little tiny extra room, that's still that much space, and that much space can make a big difference. So it's just being sure that when I land those shots that they are really precise and accurate. Not that you always want to do that, but with bare knuckle, your blocking is going to be a little bit different. So there are a few things to change up. Yeah.
Yeah, and really, when it comes down to it, like you said, I love that you mentioned blocking, because when you have those fists flying at you, the potential for the extra damage, the potential for the injury is there. So your defense has to be as good, if not better, than your offense in something like that, more so than it needs to be in anything other than Muay Thai when it comes down to it. Because
glove here to protect you, right? You still got like all this space on your face or here, so you gotta be
doing this without a glove, not good for you. It's really exciting to see this come out, because again, the sport is, we had the Ronda Rouseys, the Anderson Silvas, the George St. Pierres. I hate saying this every time. The Conor McGregors. It pains me, because you have these people who, yes, they had amazing careers and they will do things I have never done and will never do. They brought eyes to the sport. Whether or not they brought the right eyes to the sport is debatable.
Still make people aware, though,
I still think it's my favorite that the old guy that Conor punched in the bar didn't even flinch. Literally took that punch and continued drinking like nothing ever happened. And
I don't think I've even seen that, but that's like how out of touch I am with that. Like I'll go online to post or something, and I'll watch my little YouTube videos at night. But unless somebody directly sends me a video, I don't ever know what's happening, so I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, definitely watch that. Obviously, the leg break against Poirier was pretty rough to watch.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a leg break, whether it was Corey Hill, Anderson Silva, any break of any kind, the Weidman one that just happened recently, that was rough. But then going back to Tim Sylvia break, arm breaking against Frank Mir, when Nogueira's shoulder popped out of place, I've watched that thousands of times.
Yeah.
Still bothers me the same amount of time, like every single time, because I know it's coming. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. Oh my God. Oh God. No. You see these bare knuckle, you see how their faces look afterwards, and you go, why on earth would anyone want to do this?
For fun, money, and just to punch people in the face. And after being locked down, probably because we're all just a little fucking angry.
Do you think the lockdown has made people more, I don't want to say aggressive, but do you think it's made people really like, yeah, you're like, yeah, a little bit.
It's a good word. I mean, you know, I'll just even say I've noticed personally, just even going in the grocery store or to Walmart or something, like after being like defaced for so long, people's tempers, now that they can actually like see a reaction, it's like people just seem ready to like fight all the time now. And I don't know if it's just it was just that desocialization and that isolation. It's kind of like prison, right? Like it makes people like angry. And that's kind of what started to happen. And you know, that's my opinion on it. Not everyone's going to have the same opinion, but when you start, they say give a man a mask and you'll see his true face. When you start taking this away from people and you start taking emotion, even me, I'm not a violent person. I'm about to fight bare knuckle, and I say that
I'm not a violent person, but I'm about to fight somebody with bare fists.
But if I'm like walking in the store and you've got a mask on and you look at me some type of way, then without seeing what's happening on the rest of your face, you might assume how this person is reacting, and it could be totally different. So I think it's had a huge impact on society, and I think now we're going to have a lot of backtracking to do.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And, you know, we try not to talk about COVID, but it's going to come up in every conversation. The masks are going to come up in every conversation. But you're absolutely right. You know, being able to interact with somebody just based on a facial expression.
Right. And like, what if you have Botox? Like, what if you don't, like, what if their face doesn't even move? Like, what?
That was my best Botox impersonation, just so you know. But really, like, you know, having something like that, like you said, we've been, I don't really want to use this term, but I'm going to. We've been caged animals this whole time. We've really been in a sense where it's like we're, you know, survival of the fittest, take care of yourself, do what needs to be done. But once you open that cage, I have a job to do. And in your case, once that cage door closes, you have a job to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how does Jay feel about you fighting bare knuckle? Because you said his name earlier, so I was like, I'm just going to run with it. So
he's really excited. Again, the very first time we saw bare knuckle boxing, he was like, I would never want you to do that. And then the more I talked about it, the more excited he's got. So now he's just really excited. I don't know how excited he'll be to see it in person. I try to tell people that it's really hard seeing somebody that you care about, no matter what type of fight it is. When you're standing outside of that cage or that ring, it is one of the most difficult and challenging feelings you'll ever have. It's like incomparable.
100%. 100%.
I mean, you have absolutely no control, but he's really excited. He's super supportive. Like I said, he does have a wrestling background, so he's been really good with just helping me like remember a lot of my wrestling stuff and being sure I'm doing certain things X amount of days, or, you know, helping me time my, you know, certain intervals and stuff like that. So he's been a really big help, and I think it's also kind of given him, makes him feel good too, because he feels like he can kind of give something back to me, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, just tell him he's going to hate you when he watches that fight live, because it's going to be super stressful. Whether you get an 8-second knockout or you have, you know, the full, like, complete decision fight, like, he's going to be like, what the hell? He's going to be freaking out. And I've watched, you know, friends who are fighters. I've watched people I've grown up with, you know, watching them fight. And that first knockdown,
It's so hard.
is the worst. Like, I know it's bad for you sitting in that cage, but for us on the outside, like, it's like your heart stops. And
yeah, because we're in our zone. You guys are just watching, so it's a big difference.
yeah, absolutely. And I know that it's happened 2 times that I can remember. One time in person, and then, unfortunately, it was your fight. When I saw that, and I was just like, no, like screaming at the TV, like, get up. And at the same time, it's just like that vested interest where, as reporters and journalists, you have that talk about being unbiased and being, on the side. But when you interview somebody, you automatically gain a vested interest in them. You automatically have a biased opinion once that interview is over to watch this person and go, I want them to succeed. And it's not, I want them to succeed because I interviewed them. I want them to succeed because of, who that person is behind it. And being your spouse, you're seeing a lot more spouses in the MMA world where you have husband and wives fighting. Most recently JP buys, I'm going to say buys instead of base. Sorry, Cheyenne. And then Cheyenne base. I've been watching Cheyenne fight for 8 years. Somebody who lived right, 20 minutes away from me, somebody I've trained with, to watch her go to that point. And we were talking about this earlier about knowing exactly when to throw a strike.
Right.
And when she threw that strike last weekend or the weekend before, I'm losing track of time now, but literally the girl is getting up. She makes sure that her hands come off the mat, throws a kick. There was no hesitation that this was the perfect time to throw that strike. And that to me shows someone who's conditioned enough to know, in your brain, I know, especially for you, there's 1,000 things going on. Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? And then your body just goes kick.
Right. Yep.
And you kick. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. You'll buck somebody off in a moment where they have that inch of space that they've given you. And you go, I didn't tell my body to do that. My body just did it.
Right.
And I feel like the more you get into this bare knuckle MMA, the more you get into, this new venture into this world, because it really is a new venture, something that had never been seen. And of course, somebody like Jorge Masvidal running it is just amazing. Dean Toole, his stuff with Island Fights, with Icon, he's just done so much. So to see him venture over into this, I think he's doing an excellent job. So I hope you're listening, Dean. So you're welcome.
Yeah.
But I want to save this point now. We've already burned through an hour. I can't believe that. It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
Talk about the sponsors and who has helped you get through and will help you get through this camp leading up to this fight on September 11th.
Yeah. So as far as, team-wise, I train at X3 under Justin Burns for my Muay Thai. I'm with Independent MMA with Doug Usher for my MMA. James Levin, I believe is the proper way to pronounce his last name, for my boxing. I believe I'm going to have Chase come out from Gemmo. As I said, Gemmo, those guys are always my brothers, and they always have my back, and they're always in my corner, so I'll have them out there as well. Homegrown is a company that I've been with forever. They're working on some stuff for me. Chilled Cryo is a newer sponsor. So today I went and got the compression, oxygen, IV therapy, everything. So they're just awesome. Macro Meals is working on, they're getting me some meal prep put together since I'm just constantly on the go.
So you don't have to eat bad eggs.
So I have to eat bad eggs. So I've kind of wiped the slate clean outside of that, and I'm looking for more sponsors and more people, and maybe there will be people added onto this list. And if not, there definitely will be after this fight. Absolutely.
And I love that. And I'm sorry, Jay, if you can hear me, I'm sorry, but the eggs, it was just funny, and we're going to run with it. That's going to be a joke for years to come. So
maybe he's like an elderly man. He goes to bed really early. He said he was just shadow boxing, but he looks like he was asleep.
And it's so funny because in hundreds of interviews, I've never had somebody be like, well, I had bad eggs. Like, I've never had somebody.
That guy.
Oh, man. Well, I'll take a moment to thank some of the sponsors, and we'll throw this lovely thing right here on the screen. So we've got Berto's.
Sorry, I forgot about Tammy Stone. She's my manager, and she made all this stuff happen. And even though a bunch of weird things have happened and weird people have tried to stalk me, Tammy, I can't forget her because, man, this lady has had my back. I changed managers, and I didn't mention that, but she has had my back, and she has worked so hard and put my name in everywhere. And I'm just really thankful for her. She's a gangster.
Well, go Tammy and not go Stalker. We will have to talk about that next time. Like, I feel like we can't ignore that, but oh jeez. So we've got people like Berto's Bake Shop, some incredible baked goods right there in Orlando, Florida. A good friend of mine who we went to high school together, reconnected, and just got to try some of this stuff. So if you're ever in the area, you have to try this stuff. Tim underscore makes knives. I had to make sure to say it the right way. If you're not watching the show, it makes it a lot harder to find him. Just a dude who loves, him and I work together, loves Forged in Fire, started making his own knives. So we're still working on the official Quiggin Out MMA Podcast knife that one of our guests or listeners is randomly going to get. So we got to figure out when that's going to happen. So we are working on that. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Fat Boy Jiu-Jitsu, amazing BJJ gear, La Barba Cubana with the beard care, keeping this looking nice and, clean and not one of those guys that's sitting here doing this all day. But at the end of the day, Crystal Lawson fighting September 11th on Gamebred Bare Knuckle MMA. I'm so excited for you. Cannot wait to watch this, and I really wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Bye.